Welcome to the shop. Today is a very exciting day that I've been looking forward to for a long time. I'm launching the pre-sale of the inclined tail vise insert. When this magnet is off, the vise just has its normal function, 2-speed function. But when it is turned on, it pulls this sliding block so that you have true wagon type tail vise clamping between dogs with the bench fully supporting functionality. How cool is that? Now, some of you might be saying that a true wagon vise should be installed internal to the bench, not on the side.
Both options are possible, side mounting or interior bench mounting, and I wanted to show both. But I had no room on my bench for another Twin Turbo Vise, so I used this cheap little guy because the insert works just as well on any vise that has a space for the magnet. So there it is. The retrofit isn't too bad. It is simpler building it in from the start if you're building a new bench, but you can retrofit a bench and put it interior to the bench or on the side. Either one works. But new or existing, the install of the sliding block on the side is a little simpler, so I'm going to build that first. Let's do it. The traveling block only needs to be wide enough to accommodate whatever kinds of dogs you plan to use. I am, of course, using the ones that I sell because they're all wood and continuously flush with the bench top and allow for perpendicular or angled clamping even at low heights, which makes them awesome, and that's why I like them and sell them. Anyway, a 2-inch wide block is plenty adequate for these dogs, so that's what I'm going with. This does put me directly in the path of the magnets that I installed to hold the posts up. Not a big deal, easy to remove. Just please, if you've done the same thing, don't forget and try to cut through magnets with a circular saw. The block itself is pretty simple. It's 13 inches long to exactly match the slider, and I dado a groove into the side of the block to hold the slider. For the second build that I do, I actually do this recess in the bench itself instead of the traveling block. That's a trickier option, so I'm going to cover it later.
Quick pause on the build to talk about the slider. There was not anything off the shelf that was exactly what I wanted. So I had a custom aluminum extrusion made to create exactly what I thought was needed for the low friction travel, the low profile to make it easy to incorporate, and also real tight tolerances so that it drops very little as you open the traveling block. Only other nuance worth mentioning is the angled holes. This makes it easier to install internal to the bench. I'm doing the side install now, but you'll see that come into play when I do the second build.
This is the hole for the magnet that I'm drilling into the jaw so that I can install it in the right place to pull the tail vise block forward and make it work. And this whole magnet hardware situation that comes with the tail vise insert needs some explanation. Actually, I'll start by explaining this magnet just to make sure everyone is up to speed. It's effectively off and not a magnet at all until you turn the top knob and make it into a very strong magnet. That would take 90 pounds to remove from this piece of steel. This makes it a perfect latch for the tail vise, except that jaws vary in thickness, and nearly all of them are thicker than the 3/4 inch single fixed mounting height that these mag jigs are set to.
So I collaborated with MagSwitch to design an inclined exclusive switchable magnet that can mount with the magnet flush. See, flush there and flush there on both of these different thickness jaws depending on how you configure it.
This coupler attaches to a switchable magnet base in one of two positions. This is the low position for thinner jaws, so even a vise jaw only 1 inch thick won't be a problem. And this is the high position, so even a bizarrely thick 3-inch jaw wouldn't be a problem. This would still work. And anything in between would work too, because the pico screw can lock it at any point between those two extremes. This whole setup also gives some flexibility on how far the magnet sticks out. This is the full height that it can stick out, but you can drill a slightly larger hole for the knob's full diameter. Then the knob can just sit in a bit more, but it works exactly the same. Okay, enough on the magnet, back to the build. If you've been following my channel for a while, you might know that about 5 years ago I built Adam Savage's Workbench. When I was doing this tail vise install on my Workbench, I knew that my plan was to show it to Adam and offer to come out and install it on his bench. So, as I was completing this install, I knew that there was a good chance that I was practicing for an install on Adam Savage's bench.
And that did end up being the case. I showed Adam the tail vise insert, he really liked it. I traveled out to the cave and did the install. I'm not going to show you any more of that install except these clips that I've got going because Adam just posted a full video covering it. You can see that here. In that video and in this video that you're watching, there are links to purchase the tail vise insert as a pre-sale, either on its own or as an add-on to the Twin Turbo Vise. You get a little better deal if you add it onto the Twin Turbo Vise. And those links in both videos also give you 20% off, and they're affiliate links. They support the tested team, so check that out if you like the tail vise insert. I still owe you the second install on my bench with the cheap vise and the center of the bench install, so let's cover that now. That little battery-powered circular saw that I used to make these cuts is not the biggest one I have. The biggest one I have is sitting under a shelf over here. It's a big timber framing thing. That's too much. The medium one is in a box in my brother's garage because I'm going to do a tail vise install on Adam Savage's bench pretty soon, and I wanted to have my own circular saw for the cuts. So I had to use the little one. Its depth of cut is not quite large enough to go halfway through the bench. I've got like a 1/4 inch of material, which means this next step is going to take a little bit longer than it should. What can you do? I mean, I guess I could have bought a new circular saw or waited until I got my main one back, but I didn't do those things, so here I am doing a lot of hand sawing. All right, one down, one to go.
I mentioned earlier that I was going to cut the recess for the slider into the bench and not the traveling block for this installation. That's how I would do it if I was building a tail vise into a bench that I was building from the start. Retrofitting is a bit trickier to try to get the groove into the bench for relatively minimal advantage. So I don't know that I'm really recommending this, but I did want to show that it's possible. I'm using a router bit to remove the material. The best bit that I found was this Amana part number 45450. It's almost perfect for the job. Long story short, this roundover causes a little bit of trouble at the top of the groove because you need the full cutting depth and the wood that occupies the space of that roundover gets in the way. I just pretended this wasn't an issue and burned that wood away. That's not what I'm recommending. Don't be like me. It's much easier to find a bit that can do the top of the cut, so just use a different bit for the top and this Amana for the bottom of the cut because it has the reach and the cutting depth to get to the bottom, and that was the part that I found tricky to source a router bit that would be able to do that. So that's the full story. If you find a better bit than the Amana 45450 that could do both the top and the bottom without burning wood, definitely put that in the comments. This budget vise build is all about showing you different options, like a cheap vise instead of a twin turbo vise, and a center bench install instead of the side. In that spirit, I recognize that not everyone has a 2.5-inch Forstner bit laying around to drill the hole for the tail vise magnet knob, and buying one for a single purpose might not feel very good. So I used a 2.5-inch hole saw, which is more common, I expect, and even if not, it's cheaper to pick up if you already have the shank section for other sizes. I always forget to drill a relief hole for the waist when I'm doing these cuts. I should have done that inside of the cut, and then I wouldn't have had to keep pulling the hole saw out and scraping material off. It's annoying, but hopefully that's motivation for me to remember next time. The hole saw, of course, doesn't do the whole job. I come back with a smaller bit to hog out the material that needs to go away. I did use a stainless steel pica screw on this vise instead of brass. That's an option you can select for the pre-sale if you buy the insert on its own or add it on to a twin turbo vise. Now the vise hardware can be fixed to the jaw and it's ready to go. The vise and the jaw anyway. I still need to make the traveling block. And while I do that, let's tie up a few loose ends. I said that the links in the description were a pre-sale, but I'm really not too far from having everything ready to ship. The magnet bases are all in, and so are the sliders. The sliders, which have this angled hole that I mentioned, allows me to install it in the middle of the workbench. I'm just waiting on the magnet tops, and those should be finished and to me very soon, definitely before the end of the year, hopefully a lot sooner. And the very last thing, if you're a member of my private Facebook group, there's a chance that you saw a DIY type solution similar to this posted several years ago by Seth Miller. That is where I got the idea for this product, and yes, I will be paying Seth royalties based on the purchases that I make, so I think that's pretty cool. Thanks for watching, check out the pre-sale, and I'll see you next time.